Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Treasure Planet from 2002. And this is a winner of the Patreon movie review vote. If you would like for me to review a movie of your choice, then click on the link below and pledge, and maybe I'll be reviewing your movie next month. And this film was selected by Dan Leon. Treasure Planet is interesting, and I think it's interesting for like a lot of reasons. But I think mostly the story kind of starts with John Musker and Ron Clements, probably maybe the greatest directing duo in modern cinema history. They certainly should be up there and be considered more. They're two people that, like, when you really look at their filmography, it's kind of insane the amount of, like, the hit ratio. And not just, like, hits, like, huge... we reference them almost once a day kind of hits. I mean, I'd say of their hits, they did 2 of the 4 big Disney Renaissance movies, Little Mermaid and Aladdin. So half of that is just them, by the way. Then you get Hercules, then you get Princess and the Frog, and then you get Moana. They have somehow managed to entertain both myself as a kid and then my kids at the same time. And it's the same filmography. That is insane. And the fact that they're like still those movies, not just because of Disney, just like I hear like you could reference any one of those 5 movies pretty easily, and most people would get it. That's insane. That's like Spielberg level. And they don't, I think, have the name they should. But within the animation industry, they do. And clearly Disney knew what they had with them. They've been trying to pitch this movie. They originally pitched it with The Little Mermaid, and they were really into this, and Disney was like, yeah, whatever. Little Mermaid. They did it again with Aladdin. Disney picked Aladdin. They did it again with Hercules, but I think, depending on who you ask, some people have said Jeffrey Katzenberg just was like, all right, fine, guys, just like shut up about the stupid Treasure Island in space thing. I've also heard it was because their contract was up and they like put it in their contract that Disney had to make their Treasure Island in space movie, which is what it was called for a long time in development. I don't know which version is true. It seems conflicting. My headcanon is that Jeffrey Katzenberg, on his way out to form DreamWorks, said, fine, sure, whatever, and greenlit it, and Disney just had to deal. But that's probably, not. I think the contract thing is most likely. But this was a passion project of theirs. And if there are any 2 directors who deserve to have a big auteur passion project, it was these guys. And I think Disney knew that, and so they sort of had to kind of make Treasure Planet, which was and still is apparently the most expensive traditionally animated film of all time. Unfortunately, this movie didn't do well. But I think one of the things I like about this is its unbridled vision, because it is, everyone says Star Wars is science fiction fantasy. I mean, it is. Star Wars is science fiction fantasy. This is like heavy on the fantasy element more than the sci-fi. It's like Star Wars picks a different lane than this, because it's like they're on ships like in the original Treasure Island story, like actual like sailing ships, but it's in space, and they use solar sails and rocket boosters to get around, and they have gravity things, and they still dress like it's like whenever Treasure Island takes place and like all that stuff, but they're in space, and all these like laser guns and stuff. It is definitely like, I like, most of the time when you hear sci-fi fantasy, it's just like basically what Star Wars did, and that was cool for Star Wars, but it gets like sort of boring. And this is like not boring at all. It sort of reminds me of like what I heard about, I think it's The King and the Mockingbird, where you just sort of like let an animator go. People will always say it's like over animated, or like they're going crazy, or they're like sort of uncontained. And there's good and bad versions of that. I like seeing what these 2 would do if they could make their dream weird passion project, and it's a version of Treasure Island. Now, Treasure Island as a story is not something I am very familiar with, other than what the Muppets did, which is a previous movie review vote winner. And Disney does that thing where they basically like take something from the public domain and make enough versions of it and sort of take it over that you sort of think it's theirs, even though it's not. They do it with, every fairy tale story you can think of. And at this time, they're doing it with things like Tarzan, Atlantis to a certain extent, although I believe that's a little more original, and Treasure Planet. It didn't really work out, and I wish they had actually done John Carter of Mars during this period, and it was animated, but that's a whole other thing. They were trying to do that with this, and Treasure Island did have a very long history with Disney. There was a 1950 film version that Walt Disney, I guess, just produced and stuff, but I've never seen that version. Maybe that will win another movie review vote. I doubt it, because it's not very popular, but especially now. But I think Disney was kind of keen on keeping this alive, although they had just in the 90s, like 5 years earlier or something, they made Muppet Treasure Island. So, I mean, I know it's like the Muppets, and they're like, oh, it's fine. That's not going to be a beloved movie. But I think what that film does and what this film does, because they take a different take on it. I'm sure someone's going to roll their eyes, but I am mainly comparing this to Muppet Treasure Island because I watched that with my daughter semi-recently, and I reviewed it within the last, whenever I reviewed that thing, as opposed to when I'm reviewing this. But especially, I think, you have the various sci-fi elements. You have what they do with Jim Hawkins, making him sort of more of a lost, kind of like more tragic figure. His father's gone, all that stuff. It kind of feels like they sort of want to Luke Skywalker him a little bit, but in a natural way. You probably could have really gone off with that with Jim Hawkins. He's sort of a nothing character, if we're being honest. Like, if you're a kid, he's your favorite, but in terms of writing, like, he kind of sucks. So I get that why they'd want to add things to him, but his relationship with Long John Silver, which is a centerpiece of it when he doesn't know he's Long John Silver and stuff. In Muppet Treasure Island, after it's revealed, he's kind of like, yeah, fuck you, I don't really care anymore, and that works because I'm assuming the original story does it that way. Also, it's Tim Curry, and Tim Curry's great, and it's fun to watch him, and if he does a double cross, it's still fun to watch, and so you don't feel like you sort of lost the movie. In this, he needs a father figure, and Long John Silver kind of almost feels like he wants to be that father figure. And I like that a lot. I thought that was actually a really cool way to write this story, because it gives it more of a conscious and a conflict to him as a character. It almost sort of like doesn't give it a distinct villain. It's just like his pirate dudes are the villain, which is not really not the most amazing way to do a villain if you want to be particular about it. I think Atlantis maybe had a better one, but I thought it worked really well with this version of the story, because it made you sort of care about their relationship more. And it feels like when I've watched this story before, or with Muppet Treasure Island specifically, it feels like it's more about the adventure to the treasure, and this felt like it was about a father figure and kid relationship, which I really actually sort of liked in certain ways more than I'm usually in the Treasure Island story. But I think I like how crazy and different this is, and I like, the voice cast, which is like Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the lead, Brian Murray, Emma Thompson, David Hyde Pierce. Most of them I like. Martin Short, who I guess it was his turn to play a Disney sidekick thing. I know he is based on a character Bart from the original story, which I really don't like him. He was really horrible. It was really bad. Like, not a great moment for Martin Short, and it definitely drags down the whole movie. Like, they also like could have just cut that character. Like, you're already like doing pirates in space, and like, pirate ships in space with Sailor Wind and stuff. Like, you can cut him out too. They do Goo Goo Dolls songs, and it's Johnny Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls. I don't know. This era of Disney, like, the kind of people they have doing music are all horrible. Like, I'm not a Phil Collins. I know people like that Phil Collins stars and stuff. I do not. I just don't like this kind of music, like music videos that got played at VH1 at the time kind of music. Just, they didn't pick good people. I don't understand, like, you have this like weird sci-fi naturalistic hybrid, and there's so many more interesting artists you could have picked, and they picked like, no, we have to go top 40, and like, for what? Like, oh my god, it's just so awful. I don't get the Goo Goo Dolls. I never will. That song Iris is probably stuck in my head for all time, because I was a teenager when I was around, even though I've never seen City of Angels. But I didn't like those songs. I don't like that band. These songs not changed me around. I think BB Mac was involved, and you think, because we worked on Stars Talking together, and we're like such best friends still, that I would totally be down with that. But no, it's terrible. The score is great. The music they put on, clearly Disney needs to do that. It did feel like Martin Short's character and that were like things Disney was like, no, we have to adhere to the format somehow. And you're like, why? We're already, what? Like, look at this movie. This movie's insane. Like, you're out of the ballpark at this point. Why are you trying to bring it back? It sort of does. I also think it doesn't work. You should have just gotten like Radiohead's all weird. Like that would have totally worked. Like no one's buying. No kid wants this Johnny Resnick soundtrack. Just make it strange. Why don't you? I don't understand. Anyway, I just think like they're just trying Kid A and stuff. It would have been cool, but whatever. It does the deep canvas effect, which I am a fan of. I like that effect. I've never actually seen this movie until I reviewed it before this, but I like the effect in Tarzan. In some places it really works. In other places it does that weird CG animation hybrid thing where like you almost feel like the background, or I guess the place the characters are standing or the location, is moving in a weird way. It like feels very false to me, and there's a couple times where it just felt like the stairs shouldn't be moving. The stairs stay there, and it's like it's a interesting hard thing to explain, but it almost feels like the planes are like moving out of order and like just needs some more time to really figure out. It almost feels like also that like the stairs shouldn't be moving because stairs don't move. Maybe that. Like I didn't understand the technique of that, but it seemed like they were having fun. It is a cool look whether they're doing that or not. And the entire film was in deep canvas and it's very beautiful. It also reminds me of things like when Disney did Black Hole. Like I don't like that movie, but like they made space look very beautiful. They did in here. This is one of the first, I think it was the first films to be released simultaneously in theaters, like normal traditional theaters and IMAX. I'm sure this looked beautiful in IMAX. I'm a little envious, to be honest with you. I think I kind of want to see this movie on the big screen, which is like most big auteur statements. You want to do a big screen movie, and I wish I'd seen it on an even bigger screen because it looks gorgeous. I think one of the things that honestly holds us back, and I'm not trying to harp on the Muppet Treasure Island thing, but I do actually think it's Muppet Treasure Island because it had just come out. I think that film is beloved for a lot of reasons. It's a lot more fun, even though both are pretty wild adaptations of of Treasure Island. Like that's what our generations get for Treasure Island, is like pretty off the wall adaptations, which is interesting. Really interesting that we've gone like, no, I don't think there's been a Treasure Island since Treasure Planet, but it's like everybody's just going off all over the place with this. But I think this film has a good enough of a heart to it, has an interesting enough of a vision to it, that as an animation fan you should check it out. And I like this period of Disney where they're definitely experimenting. They don't know what's going on at this point. You know, in 1995 they released Pocahontas, and then Pixar was like, here's Toy Story, and basically animation shifted dramatically after that. And even in this year, this is an interesting year in animation. It's 2002 in America. We get Spirited Away, and at their own studio earlier that year, Lilo and Stitch came out and basically took the legacy that year. It was Lilo and Stitch's year, baby, and we were all living in it. Despite what Mr. Enner might say about 2002, it was all about Lilo and Stitch. I was there. But so this got nominated for Best Animated Feature, but like you were not beating Spirited Away, and you weren't beating Lilo and Stitch. So like, you know, and this goes to a tradition of Disney's where they have a hugely expensive, ambitious film, and then the cheaper one that's like this ragtag group of people that no one's really paying attention to would end up making all the money. It happened with Dumbo and Fantasia. It happens with Treasure Planet and Lilo and Stitch. It's like hilarious because like I see Lilo and Stitch everywhere. Once a week I see a Stitch somewhere. I do not see a lot of Treasure Planet stuff. Maybe I'm not looking in the right places. Maybe you guys do. I don't know. But it's interesting that happened again. This was it was that year. I saw Lilo and Stitch a million times that year. I am just seeing Treasure Planet now. I think that says it all, really. I think this is a great version of this story. I think mainly that it plays more as an interesting auteur vision of two of the greatest film directors of an era. And it still plays very well. If you're like going through the Disney canon, it's one you're definitely going to like, and it's going to be memorable. But I don't think it like holds up as well because I think this is a story that just aged out. And I think the reason for that is like adventure stories like this like became, you know, Star Wars, and that took over what that was. But this just doesn't feel like what I want out of action adventure anymore, this kind of story. And I think this story kind of just doesn't hold as much of importance, which is probably why I think critically this didn't do well, because everyone who was a critic at the time either grew up with it or had a vague familiarity to it. whereas I don't think don't, other than, Kermit, Miss Piggy, and Tim Curry being involved. So I do feel like it kind of got lost in the weeds, this story, and I feel like this is oddly sort of feels semi-traditional in certain cases, where I think like maybe Muppets is a little crazier, more off the wall. Speaking as someone who has never watched just a straight Treasure Island story, and maybe I got it read to part of it as a kid or something, but it was not necessarily a seminal work for me. I think these directors are about my dad's age. I think that era it still was. So its importance sort of falls apart to me, but I still like it quite a bit. It almost is playing in so many weird references that like it feels like Treasure Island people don't love it, but I like where it's going. It seemed like even the Treasure Island space thing was a concept people were into because there was a weird Italian miniseries. There was another movie about it in the 80s as well, and then they did their own. And this I think is interestingly ambitious. You come out of it and you go like, wow, they really went for it. And I kind of don't want to deny it on that, but I didn't see it and think, oh, I need to show like my kids and stuff. I was like, I mean, if they want to. It didn't make that big of an impression. Whereas like, I saw Emperor's New Groove like 20 years ago, and I still like bring up that recommendation all the time. And I think it's like, I'm glad Ron Clements and John Musker actually got to do an auteur vision. Feels like a lot of the Disney Renaissance guys didn't get that at all, and didn't get to fail like they did, but didn't also have the hit ratio, so I get it. But like, look at what happened to the director of The Lion King and the whole like Kingdom of the Sun thing. The guys who directed Beauty and the Beast, we don't see much from them anymore. They got to do that, and then they would make Princess and the Frog, the last traditionally animated Disney movie, and Moana, which is still a huge monster hit movie. I think it's sad that like they seem to, though this does fulfill something in their filmography, as their first feature was The Great Mouse Detective, which is a radically different adaptation, although I think it's based on a book that does do that, of Sherlock Holmes, and then they do it again with Treasure Island. I'm curious, had they done this again, what maybe that would have been. It's an interesting area in their filmography, and especially their way to transform the material to a new era and try to make it matter to kids nowadays. I don't know if you could do that. I don't think Treasure Island just doesn't. I think the source material sort of hurts it more because they seem to really care about it, and you get that through it, but it just feels a little like in this weird pocket. Like, it to me, this doesn't honestly feel like 2002. It doesn't feel like, oh, I lost a piece of 2002. It feels like this weird offshoot thing y'all were doing over here that we culturally sort of ignored. And like, when I'm watching, like, I mean, I like this little pocket thing you have here, but I sort of get why we just didn't mess with it, really, and I also think, like, animation wise, like, it was, third in line, if that year. It got bested by even Chamber of Secrets, the Harry Potter thing. It opened fourth at the box office on a Thanksgiving weekend. It really got trounced, which is unfortunate. Sometimes, the timing just doesn't work out, and that's horrible, but I still think it's an interesting, odd little vision by two auteurs who deserve to have their interesting, odd vision. And, they went back and did what people wanted from them the rest of their careers. But I'm glad they got to experiment a little bit. And I can't think of any directors at Disney that got the kind of free reign they did and did such a unique, different vision with it at the same time. It was kind of worth them doing this weird auteur vision. If this is the result, I'm not sure if I love that result, and I don't know if that result has the legacy maybe that the rest of their filmography does, but it's still a hell of a thing to experience, and I still also wish I could have seen it on the big screen. So if you have seen Treasure Planet and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.